I want to start with a verse this morning. It's going to be out of Isaiah chapter 40, verse 31. It's our theme verse for this message series. It's going to be anchoring this whole thing kind of together throughout these next 6 weeks long, so we'll be 4 more weeks after this week. But it says, those who wait on the Lord will renew their strength. How many likes to wait? No one. We live in such a fast-paced, I want it right now culture. It is hard when you have to say, and you hear somebody say, well, just wait a minute. It's just like everything turns upside down. I was like, wait, what are we waiting for? Let's get it done now, right? Here's what one of my guys that works with me, he's like, I don't understand what the hurry is. As soon as we get done with this job, guess what? We get to go do another one just like it. He said, so what's the hurry? What's the hurry? What are we in such a hurry? We do not love the word wait. We don't like to do it because waiting feels like there's a delay. There's frustration in waiting because you're thinking about everything else you could be doing while you're waiting on whatever you're trying to do. Makes it feel like something is not working or something is wrong. But here's what I want you to take home today. What if waiting isn't where God has forgotten you in your spiritual walk? What if it's where God is actually doing His deepest work is in the delay or in our waiting? And that's what I want to share with you this morning. I want to give you a story, and then I want to give you some principles and some things that hopefully you can put into play this afternoon and from here on out. That's what this series is about. Last week, Andel opened it up and talked about how God isn't in a hurry, and that He meets us in our divine delays. There's reasons that God slows us down on purpose. He delays certain things in our lives in order to do a work within us. But we don't like that because we don't feel Him or we don't necessarily think that anything's happening. And as I think about experiencing delays, I remember a story that we had about 10 years ago. We decided we were going to take the family RV trip around the west side. And so we have family lives in Arizona. We loaded up in an RV and was pulling an avalanche behind it. And we were going to just take off, conquer. We had like 2.5 weeks to do this trip. We had planned for it. We had GPS. GPS was still in play there. But we used the GPS, and we scheduled the routes, and we had all these places, and we would stop. And I remember we went to Arizona, and then we were going to go straight up to the Grand Canyon, and then we went all the way up to Yellowstone. Anybody ever been to Yellowstone? If you have not been, I encourage you to take that trip. And you're going to need more than a week to do it, just letting you know. Just plan for more than a week. But anyhow, we were on the way up there, and we would stop. Well, we'd stop at campgrounds or like state parks along the way. Well, we stopped one night, and we were like, well, it's early. Let's just take a drive. We're going to go down, and we'll make a loop and then come back around to the campsite. Beautiful views, man, mountains, trees, animals, all of it. I mean, I loved it. So we typed in, and we started the GPS, and we're like, okay, we'll take this route, and started heading out. Well, what you don't realize is when you're in the middle of nowhere, they don't have service in the middle of nowhere. Cell phones don't work when you're in the middle of nowhere. So we're driving, and I was like, well, let's take this road. This looks cool. It's kind of a county road, country road. We were in Idaho somewhere, and we're driving. All of a sudden, the GPS goes out, and I'm like, okay, well, surely this road's got to come out somewhere, right? I mean, they don't just build roads to the middle of nowhere and dead end them. Especially a road like this. So we're following the road, and it was a nice gravel road at first. Well, it started getting narrower and rougher, and narrower and rougher, and the next thing I know, this is the picture of kind of what we were looking at. I'm like, the road's gone. We are now on a cattle trail or some kind of other path. Might have been the wagon trail that they discovered when they went out west. Not sure. Got narrower, harder to drive. I'm like, this is home to me. I was getting excited. My wife was getting worried. She's like, we're out in the middle of nowhere. How are we going to get back? Where are we going? And before we know it, we're in the middle of nowhere and the road ends. And when we ended in the middle of the wilderness, she said, look, there's goats. I said, well, Those aren't goats. Those are antelope, in case you were wondering. So we got out in the middle of this big flat, and there's all these antelope on the hills. I thought I was in heaven. I thought we'd crossed over, and this was the end. And my wife's like, how are we going to get out of here? And I'm like, I don't know. We'll just keep driving. She said, well, we can't. There's no more roads. And then I agreed with her. I said, we better turn around. And the only option we had was to go back to where we come from. We started out confident. We knew where we were at the beginning of this route in the middle of nowhere. We knew where we were going, and then suddenly, in the middle of everything, we didn't know where we were or how we were going to get out of there. And what felt clear got confusing very fast. We clearly found our way out because we're back here, but we had to turn around because the road had ended, because the path that we were going down didn't turn out the way that we had expected. We had to backtrack all the way because we took this road for like 2 hours. This wasn't like just 10 miles down the road. I think we drove for like 50-something miles on this road. It was crazy. And I was like, man, it's got to come out on an interstate or something. There's got to be an exit somewhere. But the reality was that there wasn't on the path that we were on. We found the dead end, and what I had to do is I had to backtrack. How many likes to backtrack? I had already seen what I just came through. I don't want to go back that way. I want to go a different way. There could have been some more goats on the next hill. But we had to turn around, and I think a lot of us, that's how we are in our spiritual journey. We experience it this way. We think it's supposed to look like this way, and we're on cruise control. The road's nice and wide. There's exits everywhere. We're just running our path. And we think it's supposed to look steady, and we can hit the cruise control upwards, predictable. But can I tell you and reassure you that's not always how God works. He puts delays. He puts pauses in our lives on purpose to slow us down, to make us look, realize, and recognize what's happening around us. And it's not always going to be this straight up line with God. We don't just travel. There may be times that we're going up and we feel good, and all of a sudden there's like this immediate drop off, and you're like, what just happened? How did I get here? It's not always going to be this perfect thing that we walk. It's kind of like looking at a map from up above, and God just moves us from place to place. And you're like, well, how did I get here? And how did I get there? And every place that I get moved to, I come to know God in a different way, a deeper way. And that's exactly what happens to the life of the man, the life of a man named Elijah in the Bible, if we look at this in the Old Testament. And I want to share a little bit about his story and give you some backstory and some context of where I'm going with this. If you look in 1 Kings chapter 18, if you don't know the story of Elijah, he was a prophet in the Old Testament. He was a guy that God used to speak to the Israelites, to the people of God. He was different than a pastor. He was a prophet, and prophets were sometimes known for being a little bit different. God asked them to do some crazy things in the Bible that most of us probably wouldn't do. And he did that to demonstrate the power of God. So here's what's happening in this moment, in this timeline. Israel is over 500 or 600 years since they had taken the promised land. And they had, over this time frame of 500 or 600 years, had strayed from God, had kind of varied from God, had been going down this path, and it ended to this dead end. They were practicing idolatry, and they were worshiping a false god named Baal. And Baal was supposed to be the god who controlled the weather, the rain, the wind, the fire, the lightning, all of it. This was Baal's job as their god now. They had removed and gotten so far off the path that they had come to this dead end. And Baal was supposed to be the God who controlled all these things. But Elijah steps into this moment with the confidence, still a clear calling over his life of where God had him. And as a moment as a prophet of God, he comes to this heading or this head, and it's like this moment where it's like, all right, we're going to settle this. the God of Israel, the God of the living God, or the God of Baal? And so there's this like standoff almost, or this challenge that happens. And so Elijah tells Ahab and the 450 prophets of Baal, well, let's each build an altar. Let's see which God's going to answer, which God's going to show up. Let's put a sacrifice on it, and whichever God answers with fire, that's the real God. And the prophets of Baal were to go first, and so they built this altar and put these bulls on the altar and began to cry out. They're dancing, they're shouting, they're calling out to the God all day. And they keep going and going, and nothing is happening. There's no response, no fire. And I kind of like Elijah in this moment because he was confident in God. You ever had moments where you're just confident? Like I know that God's given me this. Well, he's there. He's in that moment. He's in the zone, the vein, whatever you want to call it. He's confident in God, the one and true living God, the only God, the God of creation. And he doesn't just pray and God shows up. He wants to make it even more complicated. He starts smack talking them a little bit in the moment. He's like, well, maybe your God's asleep. Maybe he's on vacation. Maybe you need to yell a little bit louder. Maybe Baal is busy. But then it's Elijah's turn. Nothing happens. And his confidence, the one and true living God, he doesn't just pray and ask God to show up. He goes out and he takes water and pours over the altar, over the wood. Actually makes a moat around the bottom of this altar. He pours 3 times water. He's stacking the odds against himself. That's how confident he is in his walk with God, in his moment. He knew where he was headed. He knew what was happening, right? And he prays. It was a short, simple prayer, confident. And all of a sudden, God speaks with fire from heaven, consumes everything, the sacrifice, the altar, even the water is consumed, the Bible says. And in that moment, everyone around there knows that God is God, the living God, the true God, the creator. And Elijah doesn't even stop there. He has the false prophets actually taken away and executed in this moment. And this wasn't just a spiritual moment. This was political. This was public. This was making a statement. It was personal in this moment in the Bible. And when King Ahab goes back, tells the queen Jezebel what happened, she's not just upset, she's furious. She's furious because Elijah didn't prove her God was just false. He embarrassed her, challenged her authority, and wiped out her prophets. That's the context of where we're at in this story. And she sends word to Elijah, by this time tomorrow, you will be dead. She tells him. And Elijah, the very same man who stood in boldness on Mount Carmel, called down fire from heaven, the same man who just watched all this happen in the Bible, pick up here in the story, he runs to hide. Elijah runs and hides. And as we read this part of the story, this is the part in the story that didn't make sense to me. I'm like, you just showed that God could do anything. He called down fire from heaven. He's the true God. And you're like, in the story, you're like, well, but Elijah, you've got God on your side. Why would you even think about running and hide? Why would you go down this path? But instead, it feels like everything goes the other way in Elijah's life. In an instant, he's climbing, he's going up, and all of a sudden it's just this drop off. It feels like a setback. If you're taking notes this morning, here's what I want you to see today. God isn't trying to change the circumstance that you're in. He's not trying to change the circumstance that you're walking in. He's trying to change what's inside of you. He's trying to give you the confidence to know that God is still God regardless of what you're walking through. Regardless of what you're facing. Elijah didn't run because the threat was so great to him. He ran because his emotions got the best of him. His mind got in the way of what God was truly doing. And I feel like we do the same thing sometimes. So here's the first point I want to give you this morning, that your emotions are real, but they're not reliable. Your feelings, they're real. Don't dismiss them, but understand that they're not reliable in your walk with God. The thing is what Elijah was feeling was real. It was very real. Circumstances that I live in are very real. Things that I feel are real. Fear is real. Anxiety is real. Exhaustion is real. Discouragement is real. Depression and things that we walk through are real. But if we reading on in chapter 19, 1 Kings 19, I'm going to start with verse 3. Elijah was afraid, and he ran for his life. This is the same guy. You just read in the story, like the chapter before. It's like, how could you be afraid? I can't call down fire from heaven. I'd be standing up there being like, bring it on, let's go. But he ran. And then I read this scripture, and then I feel like I've lived this, I've walked it. He came to a broom bush, sat down under it, and prayed that he might die. And what he says is, I have had enough, Lord. Just take my life. Have you ever gotten to the point in your life where you're just like, I can't do it anymore. I don't know where to turn. I don't know where to go. What felt like a setback in Elijah's life was a moment that God was working on something in him. I'm going to show you that. It says, the Israelites have rejected your covenant, tore down your altars, and put prophets to death, but the sword, I am the only one left. And now they're trying to kill me too. He got into this pity part about, well, where are you, God? What's happening? I'm the only one left. I'm the only one that can do this. I can't do it alone. Just take me. I'm done. What he was believing was not true. It was a lie. His emotions, his feelings were speaking to him, and he was believing them. Because we later find out in the Bible that there were thousands upon thousands still following God and the principles of the Old Testament. He wasn't alone. He may have felt alone in the moment. Have you ever felt alone in the moment? We do the same. We feel something. And then we let it define reality. I feel like a failure. So I must be one, right? Because I feel that. I feel alone. So I must be alone. Nobody cares about me. God isn't there. Or I feel like there's nothing working. So obviously nothing's working. So I might as well just sit down under the broom bush and give up. Your feelings are indicators, but they're not authorities. Your feelings are indicators. They're not authorities in your life. I think that's why the Bible tells us to take captive our thoughts. It's because our mind will play tricks on us, and the enemy will use that to distract us, to say that nobody cares and God isn't around. And that's a lie. I want to encourage you to think about that. It's a lie. They tell you something's going on. They're real, but they don't get to decide what the truth is. And this is where it connects. God isn't trying to change what you're in. He's trying to change what's in you. If God only changed your situation, but He didn't deal with the things that are going on inside of you, guess what's going to happen? You're going to carry that exact same thing into the next struggle or the next season. So slow down. Recognize what God's doing. Let Him do the work in your life. Let Him take that moment. Understand your emotions. Understand that they're real. Understand the feeling can be right there, and it can be like, this is real. But don't let them control you. Understand that they are not reliable. The second thing that you would have to do, or in this delay, is that the delay isn't breaking you, it's resetting you. There's moments in our lives where we need a reset. When you're messing with your phone and it doesn't work, Like you push a number and it just won't come on, or you're trying to search and it doesn't search like it's supposed to, or you're looking for something and it doesn't show up. What's the first thing you do? Power it off, right? We got to reset. Do a reset on it. We got to start over. Or a computer, like mine this morning, I would try to scroll up with the mouse and the thing would zoom in and out. I about threw it out the window. But then I was like, well, how am I going to make some of these changes to adjust? And I didn't. So I turned it off and I started over. And then it worked correctly. Or here, I'm going to go way back in time. Anybody remember, and I don't know, I'm probably the oldest. Does anybody remember what a Nintendo is? Okay, they didn't have a reset button. You know what you did on a Nintendo? Slide the cartridge back in, and then you had to you could stick 2 games in, one above it to hold it down. Or you got a piece of cardboard in there just right, and then I would lean it against the edge of the TV to hold the power button on. You had all kinds of tricks, right, to reset the game, to make it work correctly. And this is where Elijah is in his life, and in this moment, he's trying to find a reset, but he doesn't even know he's getting a reset. He's ready to quit, to give up. When in all reality, he doesn't need to quit and give up. He just needs a reset. He just needs to refocus and remember who he was, and that he was called, and that he was a prophet, and that he had just called down fire from heaven with God on his side. But he lost focus of that because of his emotions, because of his feelings. If we read in verse 5, he lay down under the bush, fell asleep. All at once an angel touched him and said, "Get up and eat." He looked around, and there by his head was some bread baked over hot coals. That would have been amazing. A jar of water, and he ate and drank and lay down again. The angel of the Lord came back a second time, touched him, and said, "Get up and eat, for the journey is too much for you." So he got up, he ate, he drank, strengthened by that food. He traveled 40 days, 40 nights until he had reached Horeb, the mountain of God. And there he went into a cave to spend the night. God doesn't come to Elijah and say, "Come on, let's go, get it together. Suck it up, quit being a baby. I'm still here." No, he starts slowly rebuilding him with just some of the simple basics. He lets him rest. He lets him eat. He speaks to him. He corrects his thinking. He gives him direction. God wasn't in a hurry. We live in such a hurry. And we got to get to the next thing. This is going to fix it. When I get to this point in my life, it's going to be better. When I have everything figured out as my job, it's going to be better. When my kids get out of the house, it's going to be better. When they get to high school, it's going to be better. When they're out of the terrible twos, it's going to be better. Right? It's always the next. The next is going to be better. But understand, God's got you there for a reason. He's giving you direction. He's speaking. He's correcting your thinking. He was not in a hurry. Just like this message that Andel spoke last week about Moses showing up. God showed up because God was doing something deeper. Understand that God's doing deep things in our lives every day. We're trying to rush out of a season and get into the next. And God's just trying to make us reset and rebuild us in the moment. And you're asking these questions like, "God, why am I here? What do I do now?" My question is, and my wife, she hates this. I'm like, "I don't know. What are we doing? I don't know." It's my favorite thing right now. I don't know. I don't know sometimes. I don't know. I don't have the answer. Sometimes you're not going to have the answer. I want the answer. It might be right around the corner. But I'm saying, "God, are you still here?" And God's saying, "I am. I am. But the work's not done in you yet. I'm still working on you for this next season." Because if he doesn't change what's in us, we're going to end up right back in the same place in the next storm or the next situation or the next setback. And when we feel, and in what feels like a setback or a delay, God is He's often meeting us in a completely different way than I expected. He shows up in places that I wouldn't have expected. And that's what we see in this third point is that God often meet you in the quiet, not in the chaos. We get this backwards a lot of times, including myself. We want God to shout, "Hey, I'm here. Do this, go over there, and do that." And you're like, "Yes, sir." Right? That's kind of what I would rather have sometimes. Like some clear directions of exactly step by step, play by play. But then that would pull free will from us. God's wanting us to listen, to pay attention. We want big moments, like the fire coming down from heaven. We want those moments. We want an obvious answer. But most of the time, understand this, God does His deepest work in the quiet moments of our lives. Here's Elijah in this mountain, in the cave, in the mountain, experiencing what probably even back before he went the 40 days. Because what happens when you're ready to give up and you don't want to do anything? Everybody, I want to go lay down, right? I want to go back to bed. Seems like right there I can't get hurt. Safer in that place, right? If I just stay in my little comfort zone in my bed and I don't have to do anything. And he was experiencing some depression, anxiety. And we can read it as we look and continue reading in this passage in verse 11. The Lord said, "Go out on the mountain. Go stand out on the mountain in the presence of the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by." He's telling Elijah this. Then, this is what I would have expected God to show up as, right? A great, powerful wind tore through the mountain and shattered the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, there was an earthquake. But the Lord wasn't in the earthquake. After the earthquake came fire, and the Lord was not in the fire. But after the fire came what? A gentle whisper. I would have expected to see God in the thunder, the lightning, the storm, the lightning, the light moment, that aha moment of like, "Yes, Lord, I hear you." But it wasn't how it came about. It's a gentle whisper. On Mount Carmel, God showed up with power, right? Consumed. That was for everyone else. That was to prove the difference between the gods. But here, God shows up in a simple whisper, a quiet moment, and that was for Elijah in his calling and what God had designed for his life. And the reason is simple. The fire might change your situation, but the whisper changes you. When God speaks into your life, no one else can take that away. But if He shows up across this, if He was to show up right here with lightning and thunder, that would be for everyone. And everyone would take something different from that. But when God comes directly to you in a quiet moment, that was for you. That was God speaking to you. That's why we need to slow down. That's why sometimes we need that reset. We need quiet moments for God to speak into our own lives. So let me say it again. God isn't trying to change the circumstance you're in, but He's trying to change what's inside of you. And you won't hear that if your life is constantly loud. We face a lot of distractions in this world. There's a lot of noises that we have going on, and I'm probably the worst one with my ADD. I have to have like noise in the background to focus, and for my wife, that doesn't work. She wants quiet on quiet. I like to have racket sometimes, but I have to stop. My favorite place to be is in the woods where all I can hear is the birds, the insects. That's quiet to me. So find a quiet place. Find a place that's quiet where God can speak to you. Take moments and understand that the situation you're walking through, maybe God's trying to slow you down, pull you into somewhere quiet and speak to you. The fourth thing is to let God do the work in you. Stop resisting. Stop trying to figure it out. Stop thinking that you know best. I'm talking to me here. Hopefully you can listen too. I think I know best sometimes. I know what I need to do, and that's not the truth. So I'm going to show you something here. Toothpaste. You know what's in the tube, right? What's inside? Toothpaste. We know that. When I squeeze it, what's going to come out? Did you brush your teeth this morning? This thing's empty. Right? My son used to eat that. His mom taught him that. I'm just teasing. Whatever comes out, or what comes out, was already in there, correct? I can't put this back in very easy either. Has to be factory put in. But here's what happens is, it's no big surprise that the toothpaste is in the toothpaste tube. That's what we expect, right? But when pressure is applied, what comes from the inside is going to come out. When I apply the pressure, the toothpaste comes out. Here's what I want to share with you this morning. I want you to take. The pressure didn't put the toothpaste in the tube, though, did it? It just shows us what was in the tube. I think the same thing happens within our own lives. When pressures hit us, when circumstances come on us, when it feels like there's no way out, just like we were watching Elijah, we may be moments where we're on top of the world, and then all of a sudden we have this pressure that's applied to us. There's stress. Maybe there's waiting. There's uncertainty. There's unknown. What comes out of you? What comes out of you is already in you. What's in there will come out when it's under pressure. So my question for all of us is what are we carrying around inside of us? Do you experience anger when you're under pressure, or frustration, or you get loud? You get upset? That's already in there. And when the pressure is put on us, that's what comes out. Is it fear? Does fear come out? Does anxiety come out? Does poor choices come out? That's not the fault of the pressure, because that's what's already in there. What's in here is going to come out in the result of the pressure. And this is where it gets real. Jesus said in Luke chapter 6 and 45, a good man brings good things out of the good stored up in his heart, for the mouth speaks what the heart is full of. Let that soak in just for a moment. What's in here? How do you respond in moments throughout your day? With your children, with your coworkers, with family members, with friends, with jobs. If you don't like what's coming out of you, you don't just pray for less pressure. Stop pushing on me, right? Because it's going to just keep coming out. The pressures of life, it's just going to keep coming out. Don't get me wrong. It's absolutely okay to ask God to move you in circumstances, but don't just ask God to change the people, the job, the financial problems. Ask Him to change what's inside of you. For when that pressure comes in life, because it's coming for all of us, every one of us will feel pressures in this life, and what comes out? That's the question. What's coming out? Jesus isn't just inviting you to change your situation. He could have done all that for Elijah. He could have come down, spoke to him, said, hey man, I got you. We can go face Jezebel head on. I can handle this. I've wiped out army after army. I'm the God of Israel. I'm the God of creation. I can do anything. He didn't do that because he wouldn't have experienced. Elijah would have never trusted God in that much way. He had to build something. He had to change what was in him. What's been coming out of your life lately? Have you been going down a path and it seems like it's getting rougher, narrower, rocky, leading to nowhere? And you're experiencing the pressures and there's fear coming out, anxiety, frustration, and these are the things that you've been carrying down this path. It's not what you want. You've been trying to manage it, control it, or just push through it. But you can't change what's inside you without Him. Elijah was experiencing that. God was resetting him. He was giving him the tools. He was speaking into his life. And I think sometimes we miss the mark of where we're heading, and we think that everything's going to be just perfect, and God gives us setbacks. He gives us delays. But in those setbacks and in those delays, I want to stay grounded. Grounded in the truth of who Jesus is. He died on the cross for me. God sent His Son, Jesus, for all of us. We celebrated that He was alive just a few weeks ago at Easter. And I don't want to just take it as that's a moment on the calendar that we celebrate, but that's a moment that we should celebrate every Sunday. Because Jesus is risen. He's alive, and He's with us every day. But Jesus is offering something more than He's offering more than effort. He's offering a new life. He's giving an opportunity for change in your life. And He begins that work in you. He doesn't just walk with you. He's wanting to change things. So in the moments of delay or setback, understand, God, what are you saying to me? I've kind of adapted that in my own life. I'm like, God, when I'm going through something hard, something difficult, something that I do not like, which happens often, I'm asking the question, I'm curious. I'm saying, God, what do I need to learn out of this? What are you showing me? How am I responding to the situation? Can you change what's inside of me so when I feel the pressure, I'm not getting the things that are pulling me away from God, that are unlike God? I don't want to put things, I want God to change inside of me. There comes a point where this is just something that we talk about, or being something that we think about. It becomes something that we step into. For some, that step has never been really taken. And for others, it was, but something along the way, and we've got off track. We've lost connection. It feels like we're in a dead-end road. And that distance crept in. Whether it's for the first time, or maybe you've strayed, or you've gotten lost from God. Whatever that looks like, this is an opportunity this morning that I want to give each of us to come back to center, to have a reset, and to remember that Jesus loves you and that He is with you. And He's never going to leave you. He's never going to forsake you. In the hard moments, God's teaching us something. And remember what those are. We don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to be willing to take that step. So if you would, across this house with every head bowed and every eye closed, for just a moment, I want to ask you to make some decisions. I want to give you an opportunity to know Jesus if you don't know Him. I want to give those that maybe have strayed and you're down the path that feels like there's nowhere out, or you don't know how to get back and it feels like you're backtracking. That's okay. I want to give you that opportunity to find Jesus again. The journey begins with a simple prayer. It's not complicated. It's between you and God. And if you've never prayed this, you can pray it in these words. I'm going to pray with you. I'm going to pray for you. But I want you to say these words. Say, Jesus, I believe in who you are. I believe that you gave your life for me. That you rose again. And that you're alive and well. You're the same God that Elijah prayed to, walked with, communed with. And today I'm not asking you just to change the circumstances around me, God. I'm asking you to change what's in my heart, what's in my life. Change my thinking. Heavenly Father, I ask you to forgive me of my sins. Make me new. I give you my life. From this day forward, the best way that I know how, I'm going to follow you every day. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thanks for listening to today's message. We pray that it strengthened, encouraged, and empowered you. We would love to connect with you. So if you have questions, need prayer, or simply want to let us know how this message has helped you, please send an email to info@thebridgechurchmo.org. To stay up to date with all the events at The Bridge, follow us on Facebook and Instagram.